Thanks for joining us today. I'm Gabe Garish, owner of Backwoods Pursuit, and today we've got an extra special review for you. We're going to go over these 19 spotting scopes. You heard that right, 19. We've been testing these over the last year plus. I've had a chance to take a lot of these out in the field with me, as well as a little while back here we had a group of 14 of us line these up side by side just like this, take them up to the hills and look at them for a couple hours in good light as well as fading light to rank them all, find out which ones we liked best in various light conditions. So that is over on the website, backwoodsPursuit.com. You definitely want to go check that out. Put a link to that down in the description over there. Also got a bunch of videos on a bunch of these individually with more detail there, and individual reviews on a lot of these on the website as well. They're going to be posted not only now, but in some in the time to come here in the months to come. So go get subscribed over there. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram as well. Put links to all that down in the description, as well as links to all of these so you can check them out for yourself if anything looks good and something you want to look at further. Let's dive into this review. All right, for the basis of this review, we've broken this down into 65mm category, which encompasses the 50mm koa all the way up to a 65mm full size. And then we've broken it down also into an 85mm category, which is 80 to approximately, there's an 88mm in here as well. So we've broken it down into those categories to kind of help you decide if you want to go with the smaller, more compact style or the larger style. So let's look at some of the physical features here. Now, if you want the optical performance of each of these, that is all in detail over on the website that I mentioned earlier, that review, so go check that out. But we're going to talk about some of the physical features as well as some of the standouts from this and from the testing that we did. So let's start here on the 65mm side. Now, some of the physical features that you might be considering are, you know, rubber armor or no rubber armor. Most of these do have rubber armor, but a couple of them don't. So if we go down here, really all of the koas here, the 55, the 77, and the 88, all have this magnesium alloy body, and they don't have rubber armor, whereas most of them do, like Vortex, of course, Bushnell, Swarovski. Really, most of them do have that, save for the koa. And then also down here, the Athlon Cronus 86mm also does not have the rubber armor. Now, some people like the rubber armor, a lot of folks do, and I totally get that because it gives you that extra protection out in the field. The downside to it is it does add a little bit of weight to some of these, so the ones that don't have that tend to be a little bit lighter just by a touch. Me personally, it's not that big of a deal in the testing, but really what I noticed is the ones that don't have the rubber armor, when it's cold like it is today, you know, 35 degrees or so, put your bare hand on that and it really is cold to the touch. Whereas, you know, you get any of these with a rubber armor on there, that really helps not transfer the heat to your or the cold to your hands. So, you know, personal preference on that. Now, another feature that's different across the board here, I'll go around the back side here. Some of these, like the Athlon and the Maven here, have a smooth eye cup here, so you don't have click stops. It's just smooth top to bottom, and those are really nice, really comfortable. Some like here, like the Bushnell, and actually most of them do have the click stops, the Vortex, koa, Swarovski, all the way down the line. Most of them have the click stops, and anywhere from 3 to 5 click stops. So a couple of the features that can make a difference in your eye relief. So really the ones that have that smooth focus or that smooth eyepiece are the two Athlons. The two Mavens here, the Maven S1A has the click stops, but the Maven CS1, I believe it's called, that has a smooth eyepiece, so differences there. The Miopta and the Night Force, all three of these here all three have the smooth eyepiece as well. That comes down to personal preference. I liked the smooth eyepiece, like you've got on the Athlon here and others. It gives you a little bit more flexibility. You're not confined to those couple of 3 to 5 options as far as your eye relief. It's not really a big deal, but it is something to consider as far as physical features. All right, now another feature that well, really all of these have except for one is a sunshade, and that's pretty standard on most spotting scopes. The one exception to that is down here, and that is the Maven CS1, and this is your compact version. It's 40 ounces, I believe, so it's fairly lightweight. It does not have a sunshade, but you know, that's something that they've removed there to save a little bit of weight or whatnot, I would presume. But otherwise, everything has a sunshade. Now, as far as the bases, the way that they connect to the tripod, all of these are going to require a quick release plate of some type, whatever tripod you're using. These are all the Field Optics Research I'm sorry, not the micros, these are the Pro Max, and then the FVH300 heads. They're video heads. So those are the ones we've got all of these set up on. So you're going to need a plate for any of these, except for the one exception is you've got the Swarovski here, which is really cool. It's got the Arca Swiss base, so you actually don't even need a plate if you are using a tripod head that has Arca Swiss. So it's a direct connect there, which is really awesome. It saves you the extra bulk and the weight of a tripod adapter plate for that. Now, one of the things we found to be really key when we had the large group test was the type of focus system that these used. Of course, for that test, we did the best we could to eliminate bias and whatnot. Everybody was doing the best they can to disregard the label on the side of the spotting scope and just purely look at performance, functionality, that sort of thing. And one of the things that we pulled away from that was the functionality of something like a barrel focus, which is really most of them, the Meoptas, Maven, Swarovski, Vortex, Leupold, SIG, most of them really were that way, except for a couple. You had your Koas here with the dual focus, and really what we found was the spotting scopes with dual focus were easier to fine-tune that image at a longer distance. And that really made a difference when we set those up and we're looking a couple miles away and you're trying to really hone that image in and resolve that to the best that you can. Huge difference in the ability to do that in the Koas. The Athlon over here also gives you that dual focus that worked really well. That made it easier to refine that focus. The Bushnell offers in both the Forge line and the Nitros, they have the dual focus as well. When you're only moving that small portion with your little finger, that seemed to make that easier rather than grabbing in the whole barrel of the spotting scope and moving that. That seemed to give you a little bit more shake when you're trying to resolve that image. Even with the Swarovski, which was probably in the group's opinion, the easiest and best to resolve of the barrel focuses of all of these here, even with that, folks seem to prefer the dual focus over the barrel focus. So something to consider. That's not to say the barrel focus isn't a great system. It's just, it was a little bit more difficult, something that our testers noted while doing that part of the testing. Now, as far as weight, obviously that's a consideration depending on what you're doing. If you're backcountry hunting, backpacking, want to stay as ultralight as possible, that's a huge consideration. If that's the case, and if budget's going to allow you to do so, this little Koa 553 is phenomenal that way. It's 28 ounces is all. It's a 55 millimeter, so you obviously don't have as big of a field of view with that. But at 28 ounces, that weighs almost nothing, and it's super compact. It is a little more on the expensive side. I think it comes in about $1,800 for that, but you save a ton of weight there, and the optical performance is amazing on that. If you are a little more on budget tight as far as in that regard, this guy over here, this Athlon Aries UHD, it's a 65 millimeter, and as you can tell, it's compact as well. It performed really well in our testing. It runs 49 ounces with the eye covers. Obviously a little bit on the heavier side, but value on that is amazing at $599. So really a really well performing spotting scope on the compact side. The Maven here was 40 ounces. It optically didn't perform quite as well as the Athlon Aries here, but it did better than the Bushnells did as far as optical performance. Down over on this side, of course, your Swarovski is amazing optically. It's heavier. Certainly it's a full 65, it's full size. And the ATX gives you a lot of functionality and a lot of adjustability if you want to swap out to a larger 85 millimeter lens or 95, or they even have a 110 now. Use the same eyepiece and use that across the board. So those are on the more compact side. The Vortex here was a little bit heavier, and this is the straight model. Most of the other ones are angled, but it's a little bit heavier, but you know, it's right in there for a 65 millimeter type of a spotting scope. Now moving down to the larger sizes here, some of the standouts in the weight department really was this Kowa 773. It comes in at 59 ounces, and optically was phenomenal. Jump over to the website, you'll see how this performed not only in the 65 millimeter class, but the 85 millimeter class. It did really, really well. That's one that really stood out. And we're just highlighting some of the standouts because I don't want to make this video, you know, an hour long by going over every single one of these. So jump over to the website and the other videos, other reviews to get more details on all of these. The heaviest of this group was the Leupold here, just by an ounce or so over some of the others. I believe it was 68 ounces. So, you know, it's right in there. All the 85s, 80 to 88 millimeters are going to be on the heavier side, of course. But these Meoptas also at 62 ounces were pretty good for an 80 to 85 millimeter spotting scope. The Swarovski ATX, of course, is on the heavier side, but you get a phenomenal glass with that, as well as the Kowa. It's a little bit lighter than the Swarovski. I forget the exact weight on that, but it was a little bit lighter and performed amazingly well also. All right, now let's look at some of the best performers and some of the things that stood out that maybe weren't the best about this group of spotting scopes. Of course, I know there's a couple others that we weren't able to include in here. Really wanted to get a Zeiss and a Leica in here. Wasn't able to this time around. Hopefully next time we can. But of this group, some of the standouts here, some of the things that really were highlights for the group. So on the compact side of things here, especially in the budget category, this Athlon Aries was really phenomenal for its price point. Again, it comes in about $599. The UHD glass was performed way above its price point. It again is a little bit heavy on the downside as far as this overall scope, but optically in that budget category, that one was really tough to beat. As far as if budget's not a concern, this little Kowa 553 was phenomenal. Again, 28 ounces, optical performance was the best of this group. Definitely one you can consider if you're looking at something like that where weight is of a big concern. In the 65 millimeter category, of course, the Swarovski was right up there. It was top notch as well. If you're keeping it just in the 65 millimeter category, it took the top spot on the review, but also if you add in that Kowa 773, which arguably may or may not need to be in that 65 millimeter category, that Kowa 773 actually outperformed the Swarovski according to the group of testers over the course of that whole test. So, you know, take that for what it's worth as far as whether or not that should be in this group. But that Swarovski, of course, was an amazing performer. Now the next category is the 80-85 millimeter category in the more budget-friendly line, so $1,000-ish up to $1,500, which encompasses these guys here, the Bushnell, the SIG, and the Athlon. Those are all $1,000 to $1,500. The Bushnell being $1,100, Athlon and SIG being $1,500. Of this group, the one that really stood out the most was the Athlon Cronus. It's 86 millimeter. Again, it just really performed well. It scored really well and took the top spot in that category. The SIG did really well also, but the Athlon edged it out just a little bit in some of the performance categories. And again, that dual focus was really a highlight of that, as well as the real smooth eye cup there. In the next category up, you've got the 1,500 to 2,500. That's a bigger price category, but want to encompass as many as we could here. You've got the Vortex, Leupold, Maven, and the Kowa 773. Of this group, really the two top performers were the Maven and the Kowa here, with the Kowa taking the top spot just by a little bit over the top of the Maven. The Maven was really, really good. The Kowa, the folks thought, just outperformed it just a bit in low light, edge clarity, some of those things, but they were really, really close. Everybody's really impressed with this Kowa 773 and the way that it held its own even in the larger category. So it held right there with 80 to 85 millimeter spotting scopes, which is really, really impressive. Again, same on this, the Vortex 85 on the kind of the side of things where we weren't overly impressed with was the same eye cup. It was just kind of loose, not the most amazing eyepiece there. Wish it was a little bit tighter, but it's ultimately not to the end of the world there. As you can imagine, particularly when you get into this type of a price category, the more you're going to spend, typically, the better your performance is going to be. Because of that, you've got the Vortex here, I believe runs 1600 and then up to 2100 with the Kowa. There was a fairly significant image quality difference between those in the price category, just getting better the higher up you go. But again, if you drop back here to the Athlon, which is in the price category, it's only a few $100 less than the Vortex. It actually outperformed, and if I was to move this in spot, it performed right here, right below the Maven, and jumped both the Leupold and the Vortex in according to the group testing. So that was pretty impressive there. Now moving up to the higher end, now here you're talking 2100 up to, I think the Swarovski here is 4200 for the ATX 85. In this price category, you've got the Meopta wide angle, the Night Force, the Meopta standard angle, the Kowa 883, and the Swarovski ATX 85mm. These were all absolutely fantastic. Picking between these is absolutely just splitting hairs, so it comes down to personal preference, what you like the best. All of these had the Meoptas anyway here had the smooth eyepiece, as well as the Night Force that has a smooth eyepiece. The Kowa has the click eyepiece, so that's, again, personal preference, and then the Swarovski has the smooth eyepiece. Now, as far as optical performance here, again, splitting hairs, but the best of the group here ended up being the Swarovski ATX and the Kowa 883. Both were absolutely phenomenal. The Meoptas were phenomenal as well. I mean, there was such a small difference between some of these that it was, and we're talking 2600 up to 4200. So it comes down to what's value and what's going to be most important to you. At the end of the day, though, really the Kowa 883 for the longest time was in the top spot, and everybody was saying, hey, that's going to be the best one. And then the last maybe 10 to 15 minutes, right, I mean, it was past shooting hours, looking at something a couple miles away, the Swarovski ATX was hands down just more clear and more crisp. And that was with a snowy background, whereas the times when there wasn't a snowy background, the Kowa 883 seemed to be brighter. So depending on lighting conditions, what the background are, or what the background is in that particular situation, just depended on which one took the top spot. And that's to take nothing away from the Kowa Night Force, I'm sorry, the Meopta or the Night Force. They were incredible as well, right there with them. But again, we're splitting hairs with some of the best glass out there with these particular options. So there you go, that's a rundown of these 19 spotting scopes. Again, we did our absolute best to disregard brand, to take brand loyalty out of this and just find what's best optically, what's best on the physical features, the functionality, all of that combined to get a ranking 1 through 19, as well as a ranking within each of their respective price categories, sizes, weights, and that sort of thing. So go check out the website. Go see how they ranked over there. All that information is going to be over there. I'll put links to all that in the description again for you. These are all some great options in your spotting scopes, depending on what you're looking for, compact all the way up to full size. So go check that out. Thanks for joining us here today. We'll see you next time.